This is coffee number 5. I'm your host, Lara Schmoisman. Welcome back to coffee number 5. Do you remember what you want to be when you grow up? Does your career look similar to what you dream as a kid? Probably not. Or maybe it does. The path to your dream career is always in the making. You can always reach where you want to be. Today, we're talking all about careers with my guest, Tracy Levine. Tracy empowers coaches and trains students and professionals to create careers that enable them to succeed beyond their original dreams. Tracy's keynote speech and corporate training includes easy to implement actions that empower corporate leaders to create authentic team engagement that multiplies retention and attracts top talent and next gen leaders. She creates leaders that are talent magnets. And every time I talk to Tracy, I can talk to her for hours. She has so much experience and she knows how to guide you to what's next. Tracy, thank you so much for having coffee with me. I love to have you here, and I love to bring our conversation here because every time that I talk to you, I feel like we're going deeper and deeper, and I value this opportunity to share it with all this audience. So, hi.
Hi, Laura, and thank you so much for inviting me to be part of your coffee.
Yeah, well, you can never have too much coffee, but I want to talk to you. I just feel your input so valuable, and we talk a lot about generations. I'm Generation X, and we have the millennials, and my kids are Generation Z. And the world, oh boy, have changed so much since I went into the marketplace, and I made a lot of mistakes in my life, and I took path in careers that later on I realized that that's not what I wanted. And I regret at the time, maybe why did I do this? But later on, I found out that I learned in everything I did. So why I'm here. And I think it's okay. And that's what I want to teach my kids, that it's okay to change your mind as long as you're a hard worker and you're not giving up. But it's okay to move on the side.
I totally agree with you because a career is an adventure and success comes at the end of the adventure and along the adventure. And along the way, you hope that you meet great friends like I met you at a mastermind who you could bring along that adventure with you on that adventure. So when you're afraid to do something, they may be the person who jumps out and does it so that you're brave enough to follow them. And you get to do that for somebody else to support them. And I think to your point, we do a lot of things because we live other people's visions. And I remember growing up in a generation where there wasn't a lot of options. And I went to Wall Street. But when I was growing up, that was not the childhood dream in kindergarten because that wasn't something women did.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think to your point, we sort of wind our way around to where we're going, but we eventually find our purpose driven career if we are happy. And the further we get away from that purpose driven career, the more unhappy we become and the less successful. And I don't
Yeah.
know about you, Laura. What did you want to be when you were in kindergarten?
Oh my God, I don't even remember, but probably I want to be a lawyer like my family or a teacher. And and I couldn't go any further than being that. But you know what? I had to learn how to deal with contracts along my life. And I started being in a radio. And look at me, I'm doing a podcast 30 years later. So it's something that I learned along the way. And then I went in television. And guess what? I have a degree in screenwriting and I'm writing. And now I had a degree in direction. Oh yeah, I can do some videos, and I have an agency that I need to have that eye for videos. So everything that you learn is a cumulative, and that's what is fascinating.
So I'm going to ask you a question. So, with your path, because you have such a really interesting background, do you think a lot?
It's not. Looking to your background. Mine is nothing.
Well, but it is really interesting to how you got to this podcast. And when I think back, I don't know about you, I remembered how much I loved writing.
Oh yeah.
And writing created great opportunity for me. And at a very young age, I won a national writing contest from Time Magazine. And I remember being 14 years old, but I was told that that's not a career for smart girls.
Yep.
And it took me until this last year to write my first book. And it was so rewarding because, but when I think about it, the careers that I picked, I was living somebody else's vision.
Yeah.
And I've never been happier than I have in this past year, even though it's 2020, because I'm now living my vision of what success is and what impact is.
And on top of that, you're impacting other people's life and you're helping others to find their dream career.
And I think, what's really empowering, Laura, is people like you and people like me who we actually, when we talk about finding your dream career that matches your mission, vision, and values, we had to do it because we were at a time, for us at least, there was no career path for Laura being famous and being the podcaster and doing the Daryl and having this wonderful show. And there was no career path for me to do what I do now. And so I feel like we're very authentic as we coach people on finding their purpose driven career.
Yeah, but let's talk a little more about these young people that they go and find their first job, which is not easy. It's very, very challenging to go from their bubble of school or college that they even tell you in what size font you need to write to go to the real world and to have to meet deadlines. It's stressful. And not everyone is going to go and find their first job and it's going to be their dream job.
I guess as someone who's been in the recruiting business for years, who's placed over 3,000 people, and last year I sold my recruiting firm, I have a different view about the millennials. They're just the first
Okay.
responders to a disrupted market, and we've been very hard on them. There was a reason for me to hit a deadline because there was a path to the next step. And so you could stay motivated and do those jobs that weren't really fun. But what happened, look back at 2018 when the World Economic Forum did their research of the 11,000 top employers in the world, only 42% of those employers in 2018 had more than 50% of their employees full time. And I really want you to think about that. That's from the janitor to the CEO, and they didn't have training programs. So it's hard to stay motivated and really put in that hard work because there's not going to be an outcome. There's not the hierarchy that you're going to get to go up for. And I understand we talk about hard work and value, but I think there is a disconnect to what you said. Yes, there's a disconnect in the skills and aligning them for the jobs they need to do and the reality of the work market, but there's also a disconnect on the employer side. The work relationship is broken. The employer employee relationship is incredibly broken and it's going to stay broken. And by 2027, 97% of all US citizens will be freelancers. So they are being dumped in a different world, but expected to have our values that were based on the company giving us values. And I understand a paycheck's a value and I get what you're saying, but I want to give them a little
No,
slack.
that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying at all. I love the fact that I love to work with young people. I absolutely
Yeah,
love, and I think that there is a huge failure from the company, from the bosses, that they believe that the paycheck is everything. I think that
I agree.
that's not everything. That's just part, but you need to invest in your team. You need to give them the mentorship and the knowledge. You cannot just throw your team and say, figure it out. I'm I truly believe in teamwork, and I believe
Yeah.
that being a leader is to be there for your team. And I think that
And I agree with you.
we're failing on this, but at the same time, I I know that as a young person, you need to make mistakes. You need to learn you need to find out what's your right place in the world. And if you don't try, you won't know.
And something that you picked up on, just so you know, it's a common feedback among employers because hitting deadlines and, doing what you say you're going to do. And I think by not having the training programs and having 24-hour contact through cell phones and computers, deadlines have not kept up with what is important and what isn't important. I think sometimes people have a hard time figuring out what is a real deadline, what is a arbitrary deadline, and there's this real lack of work life balance that I remember even on Wall Street when I started. Guess what? The market closed at 5 o'clock. I went home, and if you wanted to call me, you could call me on the landline. And there's no email and there was nothing. And I think to your point, Laura, and it was a really spot on point, people have a real hard time with this time management as everything blends over and bleeds. And it hasn't done well for the millennials and being a trusted partner sometimes, and it hasn't done well for the employers who hire them, and we need to figure out how to bring all that together so that it gets back into some balance.
So, yeah, absolutely. And I know that you're mentoring and teaching a lot of people into finding their dream job, their dream career. So, what's a path to find your dream job or your dream career? How do you do that?
Well, to get to your dream career or your dream career path, you have to understand what motivates you. And
Hmm.
so I would have the first question I ask them, and I would love to hear your answer. In reality, most people are motivated by three things, and it may be a combination of those three things, Laura, but we always have one that motivates us the most. And those three things are, some people are motivated by stability, some people are motivated by solving problems. And then there's another group that are the disruptors who want to be at the front. They want to lead the trends. And the first step in getting your career job is choosing one of those. Which is your motivator? And just out of curiosity, which one would you pick?
Oh, I choose C. No, I don't know. I don't know. A little bit of everything. I am a person who is a glass always half full. I learn just to deal with what I have and to keep moving forward. So I always learn how to be motivated what I have around and find the best out of it.
But beyond that, like when I look at you and what you do for people, you're a problem solver. It motivates you first because if money and stability was first, you would not be an entrepreneur. So you're
Yeah.
willing to take the risk to help solve problems for people and get quality outcomes.
I
And
hope so.
And so that's, your dream career has to have that component in it. And everybody wants to get paid and pay their bills.
Uh-huh.
But some people are more comfortable with that instability. And the reason why I've always gone to careers like Wall Street, quitting high school to go to college and do non traditional careers is because I like leading trends and disrupting and solving the big problems. How do we get a path to income for everybody so we can have a dignity economy?
Yep.
And so while I want to get paid, it's not the main motivator. So the jobs I've always picked have been cutting edge. And that's the first step and figuring out how to get your dream career, because what motivates you, that core thing, that first thing, when you're misaligned with that is what makes you miserable. And when you know that first thing, you can write your mission statement. And my mission statement is to create a path to income for everyone so that they can spend time with their family and have great careers that match their purpose driven life. And when you have that roadmap, which is your action statement mission, that your mission is, then what does that look like? My vision is we all have work life balance because we have enough money and we're happy because we were able to have a purpose driven career. So every decision I make, I bring it back to, is this decision around my career going to fit with my mission roadmap map action item? And is it going to get me closer to my vision? And those are the people who have great careers and have great success because they have a roadmap, they have a target, and they know what it looks like when they get there.
Yeah, something that I just picked up from what you were saying is about work-life balance. And there is this notion about work-life balance, and that I don't know what percentage that need to be for each one. And I believe that every person needs a different work-life balance. It's not the same for everyone.
And I would agree
Like,
with
I
you.
love my work. I love what I do. So I don't mind in my free time to keep writing because I really love it. I want to spend time with my kids, but I mean, they're teenagers and they don't want to spend so much time with me. So I get that free time. And with that free time is I go back to the drawing board and to grow my brand and to do what I love. Because I mean, I don't know if I will have a 9 to 5 job, if I would be doing that, if I would be passionate. But my goal is that my team feels passionate about what we do.
And I loved your answer because I always tell everybody that work life balance is like the word perfect. There is no definition. And so for one person, work life balance is that their life doesn't interfere with their passion work that they do. And for another person
Yeah.
who work is just, I just want stability so I could have a nice house and a nice neighborhood and a new car every 4 years. Work life balance to them is something very different. It's having the money to vacation or do whatever they want, whether it's charity, but for somebody who's passionate about the work like you, who solves problems or who wants to lead trends or disrupt the world, work life balance is almost flipped. It's how do I make my
Exactly.
life not interfere with my passion?
but but at the same time is like you cannot say, I mean, I never thought in kindergarten, oh, I'm gonna be an entrepreneur. First of all, I didn't have that notion. Second, being a woman in business, I mean, still is kind of odd in some places to look at a woman running a business, and I do not have a partner, so it's all me. And of course, I have my husband supports me, my kids, I have my parents, which I love, but they have no clue what I do. But being an entrepreneur is such a vague concept, but also it's a career driven. And so, how do you help an entrepreneur say, no, honey, you don't fit in a 9 to 5 job. You need to go and be an entrepreneur. How does it work for someone who is looking into their career?
It's a great question because, you know, the dream of the entrepreneur and being on the front of Entrepreneur magazine and being famous is what I think some people buy into. And being an entrepreneur is risky and it's dirty work and it's hard.
Oh my God, it's
And
so much work. And believe me, it's beginning of the month. I'm paying bills. I'm doing a tax stock it to the accountant. It's not only people only see the fun parts.
And so, to answer your question, as the workforce changes, people need to ask themselves, do I want to be an entrepreneur or which has a business, or do I want to be a freelancer who does work through a platform and somebody else negotiates my contracts, make sure that I get paid? And that's like being on Fiverr, Upworks, LinkedIn Pro Finder. Or are you really an entrepreneur who understands that bills have to be paid? You have to do the work. You're going to have to pivot. You have to have flexibility with yourself, and everything is in pencil.
Yep.
Because you could, I talk about when I started our firm in the first 10 months, we were on a $1 million revenue run. And guess what? The recession hit. That's a
Yeah.
little bit of a reality check about what's going
No,
on.
and also so many people that they want to be an entrepreneur nowadays. I say, oh, you need to get an investor, you need to get financial, but there's a lot of ways to be an entrepreneur and self-finance your work. You just need to be creative.
I agree because I think about, the firm I sold at the end of 2019. When we started, you know, like I said, the recession came. So what do you do? And when you talk about financing, do you sit around and say, okay, do I finance this? How do I get out of this rut? My thing is, you find an answer that makes you move forward. And because I'm a risk taker and I'm a disruptor, I went international. So without the recession, I would never have gone international because I will go, to your point, you go find the money, you go find the customers, you go make it happen, and you rearrange to what the reality around you is because your passion's still there, but you find the path to the money. And people who are really passionate find the path to how to get financing, how to get money. And we each have different things that we have bandwidth that we can do. But I knew very, very quickly that I had to expand my market because in a smaller amount of jobs, I had to go to multiple countries to get more job opportunities to work on. And that's the difference between an entrepreneur and a freelancer. An entrepreneur is somebody who has that risk profile, but is also brutally honest with themselves and say, you know what, it's time to pivot.
But you know what? Being a freelancer helped me a lot to be an entrepreneur. There were a lot of lessons that I learned there because at being an freelancer, you need to manage your invoices, your payment, your taxes. You need to do a lot of things by yourself. So you become a lot more
Well,
self-sufficient in that regard. You learn skills that then you're going to use a lot more as an entrepreneur.
and I guess I define entrepreneur differently because I and freelancer differently because what you are is what they call in the United States a micro business because you are still a business and you're a solopreneur. And a freelancer typically goes through somebody else to get the work. Somebody else bills
Mm-hmm.
for them. They do it contract. And before it used to be more manual, but it's more on
Yeah.
platforms. And so, to your point, being a solopreneur prepared you to run a bigger business because you got to
Yes.
make mistakes in a smaller bubble.
Yeah. But also, I mean, I have this thing that I always say that I expect everyone in my team to act as an entrepreneur. I want them that they have that mentality of taking risk to bring things to the table, to from what they know and just contribute. And I
Mhm.
treat each one of them as a future leaders. And this is something that I believe that you talk a lot about creating leadership. And it's something that I honestly, from the bottom of my heart, believe that you learn from good leaders and from bad leaders, but and you remember both in your life. It's not that you're gonna sometimes you remember the bad leaders more than the good ones. But I how can you help your team? Because I think being an entrepreneur, I feel like being a leader, you need to teach others how to be a leader. So you can grow and scale, but only if you learn how to trust your leaders. So how can
I
you teach
agree.
someone to be a leader? How can you create that leadership?
I think the first part of teaching somebody to be a leader is the feedback you give them. And what I mean by that is the greatest gift you can give a leader is how to model appropriate feedback. So think about the feedback that normally comes in corporations that are once a year. And you get this feedback and it's out of context. Great leaders let you fail, but also your failures, they react to it differently than bad leaders. Good leaders put in context. Yes, that was irritating. We had to run around and we had to still hit the deadline, but it didn't hit the balance sheet. It wasn't, nobody's lying on the side of the road. And so your emotions, when you give feedback, empowers them to take risks and be that leader and learn from their mistakes and also learn how to give the appropriate feedback with the appropriate emotions and make it timely when it happens and don't make it bigger than it is unless it really is big.
Yeah.
And that's what I would tell people. That's the best part of training a new leader is training them how to give feedback to others in order to empower them to do more.
Something that I do with my team, and I think it took me years to do this. I mean, I've been a project manager, a producer for many years, and that means that you deal with stressful situations. And not everyone is ready for that. Not everyone is ready for that role, and that's okay because you need a little bit of everyone. And it's just something natural to me to be able to be a project manager because that's how my mind works. And not everyone needs to be like that, but also uh, you need to deal with crisis. And when you have a crisis, what do? You don't go into crisis mode. You step back, you see the solution from your step back, you resolve the problem, and then you address the problem after it's fixed. You don't try to yell, fix a problem, and because you create drama. And I do not like drama. But I think that's one of the things that you can help in leadership is how you react to situations. And that's how you can prepare and help people, how reactive you are.
I agree. And I'm laughing at you, Laura, because I worked on Wall Street and I have spent a long time managing very strong willed people. So when I think about when there's crisis, my whole thing is, what problem are you trying to solve? Why is this a problem? Until you get to the point that you can answer the question, what can I can control? What can't I control? And start taking action to do what you need to do to create an answer. And I do believe people who are able to take that moment and think about what's the problem and ask why, and get to what you can control don't typically have emotional responses when there is something going on. You can be stressed because it's a deadline, but you're typically not lashing out at people. You're in problem solving mode. And when I go in and train people, I try to get their whole team to get certified in design thinking so that when crisis comes about or when you have a
Oh,
product that you have
can I use that phrase? I love design thinking.
that.
I love that. It's empowering. It's totally if you can like I always say that I design my work culture from my team.
Yeah.
I think that things are by design. Totally. Okay, Tracy,
And I think you lead by design. You lead by design, you solve problems by design. And you could have that word because you use it every day. I've been in enough meetings with you. So it's
yes.
your word now.
Thank you. Well, we share it. We'll definitely share it. Well, thank you so much, Tracy. I'm gonna have to bring you back. We're gonna have to do a live or something because we need to keep talking. I mean, you are an incredible woman with an incredible trajectory, and thank you for being in my life. I love you to have you here.
I'm so happy that we met this month. This has been an exciting month and learning about you and being on this podcast. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. It was so good to have you here today. See you next time. Catch you on the flip side. Ciao, ciao.